Howdy everyone, and welcome back to Fit Foodie Film Tech with your host, your girl, Fit Foodie, and Henrietta. Say hi, Henrietta. And the lovely lady, Speed Limit. Say hi, Speed Limit. Can we always live up to the law? Or better yet, can we always live up to our principles? And in today's film, that's what we'll be discussing in the movie Lawman. Now, this movie is a recommendation from my grandfather, one of his favorite movies, and I decided to give it a look. It is on Tubi currently, and it was actually a really good film. It was made in 1971, so a 70s classic, but it is a Western, and I really dug it. And a couple of things that my grandpa liked to expound upon with this film was how the shots were taken to showing viewpoints of characters. So zooming in on points of view or different aspects of the setting to show what a character was looking at. And also how this film is not about a villain. It is a tale of two different perspectives. Perspectives that I understand and also don't. The main point of contention in this film, Lawman, is living fast and loose or living strict and unforgiving. Which one is right? Which one is wrong? If you want my perspective, I've never believed in absolutes. Life is so colorful that I feel like it's unfair for an individual to live in just black and white. And that's why I appreciate the movie Lawman. Again, another grandfather favorite for my review. This was my very first time watching this film, and I would have to say it's a great movie, a classic, if you will. And today I'll be exploring strong wills, judgment, respect, unwavering beliefs in one's own power, and what happens when you're in between a rock and a hard place. Before we get started, grab a snack, grab something to drink, grab your lass and your cowboy hat, and let's dive into the world of Lawman. Lawman is a 1971 American revisionist Western film produced and directed by Michael Winner and starring Burt Lancaster, Robert Ryan, Lee J. Cobb, Cherie North, and Robert Duvall. Rest in peace. The screenplay by Gerald Wilson focused on Jared Maddox, a rigid marshal who arrives in a small town to arrest a group of cattlemen for the accidental death of an old man, sparking a conflict between his absolute adherence to the law and the community's pragmatic desire for peace. Filmed on location in Durango, Mexico, Lawman was Winner's first Western and his first American production. The film explores themes of justice, obsession, and the changing nature of the American frontier. As described, we have a lawman named Maddox who arrives into town to bring justice to a man who was accidentally killed. And who killed that man? Well, upon a few viewings, it's actually the second man to arrive in the beginning of the film. However, it's not distinguished who it was officially, so we don't know technically, but if you watch the film, you'll see. You'll catch on. And these group of cattlemen work for the richest man, most likely in the whole state, and this rich man goes by the name of Bronson. Now, it's mainly Maddox and Bronson whose principles clash. Bronson believes that because he has money and power, he can right wrongs by throwing money at it since he's richer than God, mainly paying and taking care of the family of the man who was accidentally killed. Maddox, on the other hand, has a skill set of being a lawman, a professional killer, if you will, and the power of the law to enforce the law however he sees fit. And with Maddox, he follows the rules 100%. To him, there is no gray area, no color, just black and white. He is the rule of law, and if he has to be, he will be judge, jury, and the executioner. Now, on the subplot level, we have the cattlemen that work under Bronson, the townsfolk and the sheriff who like to look the other way if that means peace, and an old flame of Maddox who entices him to dream of a different life. The cattlemen are work hard, play hard kind of men who grind with cattle daily in order to make ends meet. They have an undying devotion to Bronson, who gives them money for survival. The townsfolk are people who have groupthink like any other normal community, and they want no problems. And if there is a threat like Maddox, they'll turn from normal citizens to mob citizens. And then we have Laura, the old flame of Maddox, who is currently one of Bronson's cattlemen's ladies. And she represents a dream, a life that could be for Maddox, a softer, calmer, more stable kind of life, but also a dilemma to Maddox current lifestyle and principles. So we have our conflict: an unintentional death, and the men who caused it, who do not want to take responsibility for it in the way that Lawman Maddox would like, for them to turn themselves in peacefully and be taken to face trial. And because they're rough and tough cattlemen who can't afford to take time to go to trial for their crimes, they decide to fight Maddox to the death and see if they can best him. But the thing is, Maddox is literally the Grim Reaper. They call him the Widowmaker. He is a trained professional, and because of his strong moral code, he has killed more people than all the people combined in the movie, most likely. And because of this, I'm going to go over two conflicts briefly and a third more in depth with Maddox Lawman that leads up to the climax of the film, which is also the last 5 minutes, and it's explosive. It's very explosive. The first relationship between Maddox and the townsfolk, or the mob as I like to call them, they conspired to run Maddox out of town, even confronted him at one point, to which Maddox reads them to filth, basically saying, if you're froggy, go ahead and jump. If not, get out of my face, because I'm going to do my job regardless. Again, he is a widowmaker. Nothing or no one can scare this man. And what do the townsfolk, the mob, do? Leave. And this is important because it takes about 10 men to stand up to one who has done this his whole life. I'm sure it's not Maddox's first time to run into mobs or townsfolk who try to run him out of town. And the men feel embarrassed, and even though they're not going to do anything, it doesn't mean you should turn your back on an embarrassed man. And we'll get back to that in a bit. The next relationship is between Maddox and Bronson's men and Bronson himself. So Bronson doesn't want his men arrested, but he also doesn't have beef with Maddox. Honestly, Bronson doesn't seem like a bad guy at all. He takes care of the townsfolk. He takes care of his own cattlemen. He just runs his life the way that he wants to. He has a son. He has a family. He's not evil or mean or cruel. He's just a man who worked hard to grind, make all his money, build up a community, and mind his own business. He does want to resolve things, but he wants to resolve things with his finances. He wants to do it the easy way, which is just to throw money at the problem. However, the cattleman, one in particular whose name is Harvey, isn't down to clown, and he wants to make his manhood known and wants to go toe to toe with Maddox. And mind you, I talked about how they couldn't afford to leave. And, there's a point to that, because you have to think back in the Western times, it is you facing your land alone. You provide for either yourself or for you and your family. And so all these men have to work every day to tend to the cattle, to tend to their field, to make sure they're up and about, to make sure that they have food on the table every single day. So in a sense, they can't afford to just leave up, go to a different town, attend trial, get that takes time, and time is money. However, since Bronson has this plethora of money, I feel like there could have been things set up to where he could have provided for the families. He could have hired other cattlemen. I feel like there was a way to work things out. Mind you, have I ever been a ranch hand? No. Do I know the lifestyle or the way of a ranch hand? No. Could I be wrong? Most likely. However, I feel like there could have been other solutions besides the aggressive approach that Harvey and then the other men later on decide to do. As the plot moves along, Harvey and another man named Crow, again the cattlemen for Bronson, are in town when Maddox comes out and they have a standoff. This is their chance to attempt to come to an understanding. However, Harvey has made up in his mind that he's not going to play ball and thinks that he's bigger, badder, and tougher than Maddox. But Maddox is a rock and Harvey is a hard place. And this is where they go and they draw their guns. Harvey, though, draws it first. Okay, he is the aggressor. And this is important because Maddox gets the best of him and kills Harvey. This sets the course for events down a very bloody path. This is not what Maddox wants. I want to be clear. Maddox wants to come and arrest them peacefully, take them all the way to go to trial, get their judgment, and go home. And it's even stated by another sheriff in the town saying that Bronson could have paid off everyone in the town, even the judge himself, to go set the men free. So again, there's options available if we wanted to avoid this whole thing, but it's too late for that now because Bronson's man, his right-hand man actually, Harvey, has now been gunned down. When Harvey's body is delivered back to Bronson, the war is officially on. Bronson and his crew now all want revenge. I get it because again, Bronson seems like a very sensible man at heart. He is not a cold-blooded, hard killer. He's just trying to live his life, and one of his men is now in front of him. So he's blinded by rage and hurt. That's a loved one lost. Okay, Bronson cares for his men like family, especially Harvey. But on the other side of things, Harvey did draw his gun first. He started the altercation. He was warned more than a couple times to not try things with Maddox, and he played stupid games and he won stupid prizes. Now this is a story of Maddox hunting these men down one by one to arrest them, and he ends up killing most of them. Maddox tries to find one of the men who is more cowardly than anything, and that is who the coward. That's who's with Laura, Maddox's old flame. Because he knows that Maddox is hot on his tail, the cowardly man ups and leaves Laura, just abandons her so he can be free from justice, and Laura basically has to tend to everything by herself now. He does all that to save his own skin. You know, who cares about Laura? Laura who? When Maddox arrives over to the property where Laura lives at her man's place, Laura and Maddox start to have some real interesting dialogue that I really want to focus on. And this is the third relationship between Maddox and his ex-flame, Laura. Laura thinks Maddox is a really hard man. And even though I say think, we all know that he is. But there's no softness in him. And I'm sure if you've been killing for years, I bet you would be hard. She thinks he holds the law too high. He lives in black and white, and he does not let anything slide past him. And Maddox thinks if he lets a single exception, it will be a slippery slope for money, friends, and any other extenuating circumstances. He fears anything in the gray will turn him dirty. That I can somewhat understand. I believe you can make one exception in your life and stay on a narrow path, but also when it comes to the law especially. One thing can lead to another, and one day you'll wake up and not recognize who you are or what you stand for. So if you know who you are, you kind of know if you let something slide and you know it's best not to, you know yourself better than anybody. Anyway, after some conversation, Laura confesses her feelings for him and they kiss. So apparently he does have a soft spot for her. Next thing you know, we see them in bed together. So they had a really good time, which initially shocked me because I wasn't expecting it. But Maddox doesn't come across as a man who has dated or slept around much. And honestly, Laura might have been the only person he's ever been intimate with, if not like emotionally, physically as well. They're in bed and they're talking about where she's been, her journeys, how she ended up at this place. And Maddox wants to convince Laura to come away with him. But even though Laura loves him, I believe that is the love of her life, she says she can't live a cold life with him. And love is not enough for her. Her man that ditched her, though, to save his own skin, he has a warmth to him, apparently, that she can deal with day to day. Maddox, not so much, even though he has moments of tenderness. And as a woman, that's something I can understand. You can love and care for someone deeply and truly. And when you're with them, every once in a while it is everything. However, day to day to day, can you be with that person? I can't imagine living with a killer day to day. I think that would be taxing, and I think Laura knows better. Especially in Western times, life is hard enough. You don't need a hard man. You don't need a coward either, but you don't need a hard man. Later on, Maddox tells Laura he was going to let things go, move on, to live a simple life. And I'm assuming that Laura has changed his perspective somewhat. And honestly, I do empathize with Maddox here. Maddox has been on the road solo dolo, killing and being in conflict with other people most of his life. And I'm sure being with Laura makes him feel somewhat human. But I think he feels this way also out of tiredness, some desperation, and maybe some fear about his mortality and the path he's going down. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. Conflicts arise, everyone goes back into town, and Bronson and his men are waiting for Maddox to show up, and then the confrontation ensues towards the end of the film. Maddox, wanting to leave things behind and stick to what he told Laura, gets on his horse, basically says, I'm done with all that. He's about to leave town, and then Laura ends up pulling up in her horse and buggy. When you think things are about to go well, the last 5 minutes really shows you that people can't have shit. One of the embarrassed men of the mob sees Maddox take his leave out of town on his horse, and he decides, this is my chance to go get a gun and shoot this man in the back. Why? Because he was embarrassed. People's egos, and I'll touch on that in a moment. He attempts to shoot at Maddox, and another sheriff in the town shoots that man, but all that gunfire starts a whole hellfire of nonsense and tomfoolery and destruction. The gunfight is ensuing, and this is what is so frustrating, because the outcome of the movie could have been totally different if people would just not be stupid. But that's what happens when you have mob mentality. Okay. Maddox kills one of Bronson's men. Now there's 3 men left, and Maddox says there's been enough, like enough is enough, and he turns to again walk away. Another one of Bronson's men confronts Maddox. Maddox doesn't want to do this because this is Bronson's only son. So Bronson's son is now in the mix, and he wants to be a big bold man. And of course, Bronson's son tries it, and he gets killed because Maddox is a widowmaker. He does this for a living. And then we see Laura's man. He has seen enough of everything. The one who ran away, who abandoned her. Yeah, he decided to show up for his dudes, his partners. And after Bronson's son got killed, he decided, you know what? This is enough for me. I'm going to run out of here, okay? So he runs away towards Laura, and Maddox is watching him. Now, one thing that I did not touch on that I want to be clear about. Maddox is a man of the law and of a principle. He never draws his gun first. If someone wants to try him, he will finish that, okay? If someone is running away from him, he'll just capture him. He never shoots someone in the back. He never does anything dirty. However, as he's watching this man run towards Laura, what does Maddox do? Shoots him in the back. Shoots him down like a dog in the street.
Down like a dog in the street.
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Do I have your word as a lawman not to shoot me down like a dog in the street?
In front of Laura. Interesting. Maddox is watching Bronson mourn his son, and he sees what he's going to do because he's there to finish business, because why not? All hell just broke loose. And Bronson just offs himself, which was just really sad, because none of this had to happen at all. Like, bloodlines gone, people just down, like, no reason. And after that, Maddox says, okay, well, that's everyone who needs to be got. So he gets on his horse and he rides off without even looking. He just rides past Laura. Just goes. And she is holding her man who was shot in the back. He's out of town with business finished. Maddox just leaves. And that's how the film ends. Yeah, great. At the end of it all, Maddox thought about it and decided to break his own rules. And he couldn't do much from there but leave. I think he was tired of his life and yearned for something different. But he is who he is. He cannot change, but in a subtle way, in the midst of all that chaos, he did at the same time. And the funniest part about all of this, the man, I told you how in the beginning, if you see the second man show up, he's the one who killed the old man in the film. Well, a little bit earlier, before all hell broke loose, one of the Bronson's men was arrested. And do you know who was arrested and put in jail and actually lived? The man who actually shot the old man accidentally. So not only was a whole family destroyed, a town will never be the same, Laura is now left destitute. The man who actually started this whole thing because he wanted to be shooting up the town, he's the one who lives and is in jail. Anyway, so Laura is a fantasy of a nicer, softer, calmer life that Maddox wanted to retire into. Even though he seems unhuman to most people due to his cold nature, at the end of the day, he's still a man and he has wants and needs. And when he was having his intimate conversation with Laura, he spoke about his friends and other lawmen who have died or have been severely disabled because of their lawman profession. And I think while he was talking it out with her, he feared that would be his fate. And I think he wanted a different ending to his story, which is why initially he was just going to drop everything and let everything go. But when faced with reality, not only did he decide to handle things like he usually would, he decided to shoot an unarmed man who was running away from him. And I think he did it for two reasons. One, he didn't want any loose ends. No one who was out there who would come to exact revenge. And I can understand that because the thing about cowards and men who are embarrassed, they end up eventually wanting to come and do something. And to have that on your brain, I wouldn't want to deal with that. Just end it, finish it, just be done. But that goes against, again, his principles. In his history, Maddox would never do that. He never draws first. And that's what separates him between being a lawman, a professional, versus just a killer. And I think the other reason why he killed him was because of what he represented. A coward, a cowardly man, a man who left his woman so he could save his own skin, who gets the girl and the simple life. Maddox thought for a moment before he shot that man, and I think his emotions got the best of him. He was almost free to leave things as they were, get Laura and ride off into the sunset. Instead, he knew after the shooting started, his fate was already sealed. His life, his love, his career will always be what he knows and what he is. Him riding off without saying a word to Laura while she's mourning her life and her men and is pissed. Look at her face. And you know what? I would be too. Everyone's lives are ruined. The richest man in town lost his people and his son took his own life. The town is never going to be the same, especially with their wealthiest man out of the question. And Laura has no man. She is an older woman with a ranch she now has to protect and defend on her own. And Maddox has to live with the fact that he broke his rules and has faced mass destruction in 5 minutes that I'm sure will haunt him for the rest of his life. So what have we learned? What do we think, y'all? Let's really talk about it, okay? There are certain things in your life that you have to come to terms with. And since I'm a bodybuilder, I'm going to use bodybuilding terms, okay? When you live a certain type of lifestyle, there are certain things that you can never be again. Before I was a bodybuilder, I would eat a whole bunch of food, eat late in the night, drink what I want, didn't really care about sleep, would work out whenever I felt like it. That was before my life as a bodybuilder. Now, when I bodybuild, I don't eat after a certain period of time. If anything, the latest I eat is like 7:30. Okay, I don't eat as much. I make sure I prioritize my rest. I work out, if not work out, walk every day to get a certain amount of steps. I am this person now. Do I have some leeway? Yes, I love cinnamon rolls. I will tear up a cinnamon roll. I like my ice cream. I like my things in moderation every once in a while. Again, for me, it's not black and white. A lot of bodybuilders, especially the professionals, it is black and white. They measure everything. They eat only certain types of food. They are strict and structured. It is black and white for them. And with that, you lose out on the things that you've liked before. But sometimes those people are not even foodies like I am. Okay, so again, different people, different things work for different folks. Not to get too off topic, but what I'm talking about is you have to understand life comes with certain sacrifices. If Maddox wanted to live a certain kind of life, he would have to sacrifice who he currently was. And I think no matter how much he wanted to, he knew deep down inside he wasn't hardwired for it. Because okay, imagine that the shootout never happened. He ended up with Laura. Do you really think he could have lived a soft life? Do you think he could have just been a simple ranch hand helping her around the place and, tending to cattle in the field? I don't think so. There's a certain pride and a certain feeling that you get doing this work, living this way. And even though it is tiresome and lonely, that is what he knew. And he knew he could do that the best. I don't think he was ever trained to be a cattleman. I don't think he ever trained to do anything else besides lock people up or kill them. And you just have to be careful with people who have that certain type of pride, who have ego, who are easily embarrassed, who try to buck up and do dirty things behind your back because they felt like you bested them. That happened a lot in the film. I think it shows the cost of being dirty. That dude, a part of the mob, the embarrassed man, decided he was going to take out the lawman even though he was leaving. I think that further proved to Maddox that he would never be safe to live any kind of life. He can never let his guard down because of who he is. He has a reputation. He has people who would come after him if they could. And I don't think he could live a life just laying down with Laura and living a peaceful life and in the back of his head feel like he was secure in the end. And it's unfortunate, but very impactful movie. Very grateful to have watched it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching this film with me. Let me know what you thought about this movie or my review in the comments down below. And until next time, what do we say, lasses? Make sure you eat well, drink well, sleep well, move your body, and until next time, ciao. Too hot, too hot, baby. Gotta run for shelter, gotta run for shade. Get into it. The screenplay, out. In a dress, in a dress poo, little dress of poo for a little girl.